Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you're watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel on the race for 10,000 subscribers. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from Dickies Arena once again in Fort Worth, Texas, very own publisher Andrew Jones. And AJ, Carolina and Baylor, for that matter, just had their press conferences ahead of Saturday's game, 12 p.m. tip-off, 11:10 a.m. Central Time tip-off for AJ over there. So a little bit early tip-off. You don't see those very often. I'll say that for sure. That game will be televised on CBS. Before we dive in, we're going to look ahead to the matchup a little bit in this one, kind of recap some of the stuff from the press conferences as well. Before we dive into that, though, want to let you guys know to head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. We just had an awesome promo wrapped up on Thursday where you get THI for $22, 1-year subscription for just $22. Regardless, still $8.33 a month now. We've got a ton of stuff going on. Class of 2023 football series. Dina's getting ready to roll out. David Sisk has had a bunch of film reviews as well as some scoops on G.G. Jackson, who Carolina is hard after. So spring practice starts back strong next week as well. So if you want to get insight to all that, want to be able to read premium content that you can't access unless you're signed up, just click the link in the description below and do it for $8.33 a month. It'll take you right on over to our website. But AJ, let's dive into this matchup, man. I think this is I sent this in our staff picks because I just sent you a few minutes ago. Funny enough, I had to get mine in early. You know, I like to get mine in early for you, AJ. These are the games you love right here. You know, number 1 seed Baylor, number 8 seed Carolina, round of 32 matchup. Winner goes to the Sweet 16. You got Baylor playing in its home state, Fort Worth. I mean, it's just a lot of storylines. This is a fun game, not only to cover, but it's got to be an incredibly fun game for both Carolina and Baylor to play in. A lot of things on the line in this one. It's going to be a fun one to look at, though. So, AJ, Baylor 27-6, finished 14-4 in Big 12 play. Before we dive in heavy to Baylor and the matchup, you obviously sat in on the press conference. I was able to listen to UNC's press conferences as well. Just any takeaways from either Baylor or Carolina's press conferences, maybe some notable quotes or anything like that you can let us in on?
Yeah, I asked guys about Brady Manick and what they remember about him, and if they've seen anything on film or watching him throughout the course of the season that's different from the guy they played against at Oklahoma. And he played against Baylor 7 times when he was at Oklahoma. And they said that he's more aggressive. And Scott Drew, the Baylor coach, was asked the same question, and he actually kind of made a little joke about Brady's beard. And he said, you know, he's got that big beard now, like he's trying to hide the guy that we know, but we know who he is. We know what kind of player he is. We got a lot of respect for him, and he said a lot of very positive things. So I actually asked Brady about Coach Drew's comment, and both comments from the players. I think it was Adam Flagler as well. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I said, you know, what kind of differences will they see in your game tomorrow that maybe they didn't see when you were at Oklahoma? And he did agree with being more aggressive and confident and all those kind of things. So I thought that was interesting. They had some fun with it. Scott Drew had some fun with it. And I think there's a tremendous amount of respect between these two teams. You know, for Carolina, it's kind of rare that they're facing a defending national champion so early in the next tournament, but that's what they're doing here. That's their reality. And for Baylor, it's kind of weird being a number 1 seed and defending national champion. And most of the questions they got were about North Carolina. Yeah. And most of the questions North Carolina got were about North Carolina. Even though we're 90 miles or 85 miles or whatever it is away from Waco, or maybe it's a little bit further, I'm not sure. This is the home state. They get a ton of coverage in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The team that people want to talk about is the Blue Blood, the one with the brand, the one with that uniform that they're going to roll out on the floor with tomorrow. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's not unlike experiences I've had in the past in covering Carolina or Duke, and certainly Carolina, because I've done more of their NCAA tournament games. But when they show up, and people that usually don't get a chance to see them in person, they're very interested. They're interested in seeing them. They're interested in hearing them. They're interested in being around them. They're interested in just kind of having a rare in-person experience with that kind of brand and culture. So that was a big part of the conversation. Not so much brand and culture, but just about Carolina. A lot of stuff about the Tar Heels. And I thought that was really interesting. The stuff that was about Baylor, you know, they got 2 of their best players are out. LJ Crier's their leading scorer. And I don't want to butcher his name. I know he says Jonathan T or, Jonathan TT or JTT.
Hey, AJ, I got a pronunciation for you. I got to pronounce it. I actually looked this one up on Google. It's Chamwa Chichua. I actually had to look that one up.
Yeah, exactly.
Pat myself on the back.
Well, we call JJ Joe's JJJ, like when I'm tweeting or something like that. He's JTT.
Oh, easily.
He was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Cryer's their leading scorer, and they're not going to be in this game tomorrow, but they're still an excellent team. Mm-hmm. They have three guys that will play a lot that played a lot in the national championship game last year. Adam Flagg was one of them. He was on the dais today. They had three guys on the dais. And I thought it was interesting, by the way, that Carolina sent all five starters up there. That's usually something you see a little bit later in the tournament. I believe Sweet 16 on, it's mandated. Mm-hmm. But they play an Iron Five, so all five went up there, and there was some good stuff. It was, if you haven't seen it, we have the video of Carolina. You can also find the video of Baylor somewhere. We might actually post that on our boards, and we'll have a full transcript as well. But I like these days. I told you before, Jacob, I love the in-between days. It's a chance to get for me, I've only seen, the only other time I'd seen Baylor in person until this weekend was when they lost to Georgia State in Jacksonville in the NCAA tournament in 2015. So they were in and out quickly. And I've seen most every major program in the country. It's kind of rare that I haven't seen them that much. So there's a curiosity factor for me as well, being in a Scott Drew press conference. And you could sort of get a sense about why this guy's so successful. He's not stressed about the situation they're in. He knows what his team's all about. He knows what they have to do. They know what they have to do. But I think that if there's pressure on anybody tomorrow, it's going to be pressure on Baylor.
Yeah.
Because they're the one seed. They're the defending national champs. They got two starters out, and they're playing a team that's hot. Mm-hmm. And if you hear the questions from the other writers, from the Baylor media, from the Texas media, the local media, you might as well think that MJ and Jameson and Hansbrough are rolling out on the floor tomorrow, and that's not the case. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
It is always interesting to see the pull and the attraction that Carolina can have, no matter how good a team is.
Yeah, there were quite a few questions about their transition game, and I'm thinking, that transition game's not always there. That's not what we've seen. I know the intent eventually is for it to be there, but I do believe this team has been an incremental process that we've talked about, and they're not racing up and down the court. They did yesterday because Marquette allowed it to happen. Carolina just dominated, so part of that equation was the transition game, but they're not always a transition team. I think it'll be a challenge to get in transition tomorrow because Baylor does everything well. If you look at their statistics, they do everything well. There's nothing Baylor doesn't do well. And some things they do top 20, top 30 well in their statistical categories. It's a thorough, fundamentally sound team that is tough, athletic, and they have a winning mindset. They have more winning mindset than the kids at Carolina right now.
Absolutely.
Baylor won 6 games in the NCAA tournament last year, including yesterday. North Carolina's won 4 since winning the national championship in 2017.
Wild. It is really wild to think. AJ, let's focus on Baylor a little bit more. I got a bunch of notes here I want to run through real quick, and I know we've hit on them a little bit, but just some notes I want to run off to go a little bit deeper into them. So looking at their NCAA tournament history, obviously beat Norfolk State 85-49 in the first round. Bears have won 7 straight tournament games. Obviously defended national champions last year. Let's focus on the injuries for a second, because like you've hit on with a few guys, it's been an injury-filled season for Baylor. Actually started the year winning 15 straight before some of those kind of injuries started coming in. LJ Cryer, leading scorer, is out, will not play this weekend, hasn't played since February 16th, is their leading scorer, like I mentioned, with 13.5 points per game. Also got Jonathan Chichua. He is also out, who we've already hit on a little bit. And freshman forward Kendall Brown actually returned for them after missing a few games. He returned against Norfolk State in the first game. So a little bit of positive injury news for Baylor, even though there's not much when you kind of look at some of those guys that they're missing. Focus on their stats a little bit more as well, because I know you hit on this team being just kind of a good team in all respects. And I think these stats kind of highlight it. Number 2 finished number 2 offensively in the Big 12, averaging 76.8 points per game. In comparison, Carolina averaging 78. Number 4 in defense in Big 12, letting up 63.2 points per game. Carolina is let up 71.5 points per game this year. Number 2 in the Big 12 in three-point shooting, shooting 34.8% from beyond the arc. In comparison, Carolina shooting 36.2. And number 3 in rebound margin in the Big 12 at 5.2. In comparison, Carolina led the ACC with 7.9. And just looking a little more nationally for Baylor, finished the season 9th in offensive efficiency and 14th in defensive efficiency. So, like you mentioned, AJ, I think that's where it started. I know there's a couple important guys out for Baylor. This is a team that's dealt with injuries all year. I think a safe way to kind of explain Baylor based on this year, I think it's a team because of some of those injuries that they've had has not gotten a lot of respect. And this is a team that finishes regular season co-champions of the Big 12 alongside Kansas. I know they didn't went out in the quarterfinals of their conference tournament, but this is a team defending national champions, does a lot of things well, really, kind of top of the Big 12 in basically every statistical category. And it's also a team that I'm seeing a lot of people picking Carolina to get the upset against tomorrow, which I think based on the way Carolina is playing, I think that is a reasonable expectation. I think that's something that could definitely happen. But it seems like this Baylor team, because of a few of those injuries, just hasn't got a lot of respect this season. But make no mistakes about it, they're number 1 seed for a reason.
Well, the selection committee respected them. They gave them a 1 seed, and Absolutely. That's really all that matters because they're the ones who actually comb over a lot more information than some guy on Twitter.
Yeah.
So, sure. and let's keep in mind, there is a precedent for a team having a fantastic regular season getting bumped a notch or two in the seeding process because of injuries. It's happened before. Cincinnati fans will remember Kenyon Martin, when he got hurt and broke his leg and he wasn't able to play, that dropped them a seed and it affected their tournament run in addition to not having him, obviously. Since Baylor didn't drop because Baylor figured out how to win without those guys. And that's why I asked Brady today about what common thread has he experienced Scott's routine. Remember, Brady was at Oklahoma for 4 years, so there was a heavy personnel changeover at Baylor throughout the time that Brady was in Oklahoma. And he said the common thread was they defend, they rebound, they move without the ball. They're one of the leading teams nationally in assists. They're one of the leading teams in steals. They defend the perimeter. They're number 22 in the country in three-point defense, allowing 29.7% from the perimeter. For Carolina fans, that all concern you some. So, because when teams take that away and they're then able to pack it a little bit on Armando, that's when Carolina's really struggled offensively. So they do everything well because it's a program thing. They have a culture. Scott Drew's been there 19 years. It's crazy to think he's been there 19 years because he had an enormous rebuilding job to take over to do when he got there. There was a situation with a teammate a guy had murdered a teammate on the roster, and Dave Bliss was in all kinds of trouble when he was there. And Scott Drew slowly, surely, methodically built this thing. They took their lumps. They lost big games, learned how to play in them, learn how to win them. And now here they are, a 1 seed. And I think Carolina's going to have to play better than it did yesterday to beat them, Jacob. Absolutely. Because these guys, it doesn't matter what the stats are. It doesn't matter that it does matter they're missing 2 of their best players. There's no doubt about that. It's very difficult for any team to sustain that, especially at this juncture of the season. But if there's a group that can do it, it's this group. Scott Drew, in talking to some other people, is an incredible motivator. He has an amazing ability to get a guy to believe that he can do something that night in that game that maybe he hasn't been asked to do that much of previously. That's how you become a national championship coach. That's how you become a coach of a program that has been almost as successful as Kansas's dominant run for a long time in this league. So Carolina's going to have to strap it on. They're going to play athletes. They're going to play physical dudes. They're going to play a smart team that's fundamentally sound. Their coach is going to put them in the right spots. So the Tar Heels have to be able to match that, and they got to hit shots in this game.
Definitely. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is going to be a very, a bunch of punches thrown back each other from each team in this game, if that makes sense to everybody. I think it's going to be a game that's back and forth. I think it's going to be physical. I think it's going to be extremely competitive. And I think it's going to be, like I mentioned, a really, really fun one to watch. So, AJ, I think it's a good place to wrap these one up. Let
me throw in one more thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you said something about how, both teams are playing well and Carolina's playing well and everything like that. That's true. And a lot of times I don't put a lot of credence in that in the postseason because I look at each NCAA tournament game as an individual season because the matchups can vary and you're not that familiar with the teams that you're playing. I've seen a lot teams play like Carolina did yesterday in the first round and get punked in the second round. I've seen teams like Baylor as a 1 seed, overcome not having a couple of guys in the first round game, but how far can you stretch it along when you play increasingly much better teams? Do they feel the effect of not having those guys? They did lose a few times this year after they started out 15 or 16-0, whatever it was. They only got pounded once. That was at Kansas, and that's going to happen to a lot of people, especially with the Jayhawks being sky high that night. But I wouldn't put a ton of stock into how either team played yesterday. It's more the recent stretch. I think Carolina's just playing better. I think that they figured a lot of stuff out. And in fact, there's been a lot of talk about the week at Miami and Wake Forest and what they learned from that. And then the message that Hubert had the next day, instead of kicking their butts and making them run till they threw up, he hugged them. And he told them, look, all of your goals are still in place. And he was right about that. And that relaxed the team. I asked him today, I said, so a lot's been made of that week, Coral Gables and Winston-Salem, and then how you handled it and how they responded. I said, but is there something similar that you could apply to the Pitt loss at home? Because you and I have talked a couple times, Jacob, where I thought, they might not be the team they are now without that, because they needed a lot of reminders about what not to do and how not to approach a game. And in the end, Hubert kind of said, we needed to remember that. He actually said, and I'm going to sidebar for a quick second, that they looked at film and he showed them 20 things they did on the court against Pitt that they hadn't been coached to do. Wasn't part of the plan, wasn't part of the script or anything like that. It wasn't part of, hey, this is what I want you to do in this situation. 20 things. That means their minds weren't in it. And that's how you lose to a team like Pitt. And that was sort of the last reminder. Guys, you now have a ton of evidence of what not to do and how not to approach things. You can't do that anymore. And I think since then, the next game was at Virginia Tech, they've really grown a ton because they've kind of kicked that part of who they were to the curb. I don't think it's who they are right now. Disregard the Virginia Tech game in Brooklyn. I don't think that was what happened there. They've been a pretty together team, a tough mental team. They've had a lot of cohesion, all that kind of stuff. So I think all those things are going to show up tomorrow. The key is going to be, can they make shots?
Yeah.
Can they get enough open shots, and can they make their shots? And can they keep Baylor from getting into some kind of a groove and getting into transition? If Carolina can do those things, I give the Tar Heels an excellent chance to win that game.
Yeah. Got to hit shots, AJ. I was going to wrap up with that. You really do. You do got to get hit shots. This is a Carolina team that relies so heavily on their outside shooting and hitting jump shots. So if this is a team that's cold tomorrow, it'll be a long day. But we'll see what happens. Again,
season will end.
Yeah, season definitely will end if they don't shoot well. 12 p.m. tip Eastern time over here, 11:10 p.m. tip Central time where AJ's at. Again, you can watch that game on CBS. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. This is for another Look Ahead podcast, looking ahead to the game against number 1 seed Baylor. Again, guys, click the link in our description below to head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can sign up for just $8.33 a month. It is a fantastic time to do so with just a ton of stuff going on, not only basketball, but football as well, football recruiting, basketball recruiting. Head on over there and sign up and become a member of our awesome community and become an insider too. You guys know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.